you have X, Y, and Z, because we are counselors as well, and advisors as well as salespeople. So, but that is a, it's just it's an open door to upsell.
Right. Exactly. And how do you find that out? Just by asking them those questions?
We have a checklist. We just quickly run through it, and most of the things are not going to be relevant. If you're selling a homeowner, you don't have to talk about cyber liability or anything like that. So, but you just run through it, get them to sign off on the end, and there's your disclosure, their acknowledgement that you actually discussed X, Y, and Z. So if there's a problem down the road, and there's a claim of some sort, and they say, well, how come you didn't offer me that or all that additional coverage?
Right.
We could be sued.
Right.
So we have to get them to sign off on that.
So do you have a physical checklist that once you've made a sale, there'll be other...
While you're making the sale,
for
sure, not after.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
As you're talking about one product they're interested in, you also have to offer all the others. It's just a good way to, present the breadth, the scope of your company.
Right. And I would imagine in their eyes, it makes you look great because no matter what their need is, you have something for them.
Yeah.
It's great. And staying optimistic, sales.
I have a point I don't think we've discussed it, is that all of this is for naught if you don't have a really good product or really good service from the company behind you. Someone can sell something and then they can be handled so poorly through the rest of the process that it is worse that you even made the sale.
Right, exactly. And you're kind of in a tough spot when you're out selling and you don't truly believe in the product or service that you're championing. That can be really difficult. So that's a key part when you're...
Just to make sure that everything's in order behind that sale.
Right. So as an example, like delivery, if you promise something and then the delivery trucks don't deliver it on time, it makes you look bad.
Or the quality control.
Yeah.
Well, as a salesperson, you get all the stuff. I mean, if something goes wrong, you have to deal with it.
Yeah, you're the face of the whole business.
It's one of the negatives, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true, you're the front line. So when people think of the business, they're thinking of you. That's how important it is to always be doing your best. And it is amazing, we talk about different countries that people want to travel to. It blows my mind that you've never been to, say, Switzerland before, and you get off the plane and you meet the first Swiss person and they're pleasant to you. And you say, oh, the Swiss are fantastic. And you're basing an entire nation on one person. But that's what people do to salespeople. Excuse me. They will judge the entire organization, doesn't matter how big it is, on you, which can be a fantastic thing, or if you're not doing the right thing, can make your company look better. Any other thoughts on that? So staying optimistic, because in sales it's going to be, it's not an easy, I think it's not a complicated profession or trade, but it's not complicated, but it's not easy at the same time. And there's going to be roadblocks. People are going to say no. And that's why you're hired, because if sales was that easy, they would just get the engineers to go out and sell the products if it was just taking orders. But it's not. It takes a whole very unique and special set of skills. So a key to that is when people do say no and something's gone wrong, brush it aside and don't let it get to you. Never take it personally. Because the reality is it's not personal. When someone says no to you, they're not really saying no to you. They're saying, there could be 1,000 reasons why they're saying no.
So help us with that.
Yeah. With not getting down when someone says no.
I can intellectually say, it's totally not about me. I get it. Your soul, your heart, whatever, isn't quite there. How do you get there?
You get back on the horse.
You make another call.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah. And just really understanding, really truly deep down that you do feel it is about you when someone says no. Do you feel personally rejected? Sometimes. I mean, it's both. It can happen, obviously.
No, but don't you say to yourself, I mean, my mental head goes, I should have approached it.
But that's great that you're thinking that, because you do want to be analyzing. You just mustn't let it get you to the point where it puts you off wanting to get out and make more sales.
Remember, a third of the pie is no.
A third of the pie is no. Well, exactly, yeah.
Well, 2/3, you're saying.
You know you're going to
But that other third is convertible.
It's convertible, exactly.
If you know you're gonna make a certain percentage of sales and pick the percentage, 50%, you know you've got to get rid of 50% of people, so that no is like, okay, great, I'm closer.
I know it's one step closer, right? Yeah. John?
One of my mentors many years ago was an amazing man who was quite well-to-do, owned a couple of companies, and he did sales seminars for fun. And he got his start, what he used to call selling dirt suckers door to door. He was a Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman, and he made a bloody fortune doing it. And he took that fortune and he made an even bigger fortune out of it. What he used to say, and this is absolutely true, is that to a degree, depending on what you're selling, but to a degree almost all selling is a numbers game. So if you analyze your success in your selling career, and you look at it and you realize that on average you have to make 10 calls to make one sale, which is probably pretty good for a lot of people, then what you're doing is you're counting those. And so when you get to number 9 and you're feeling really discouraged, all you have to do is say, number 10's coming up. I'm getting that one. And that's what it comes down to.
Right, which is it's exactly what you were saying, that
Yeah.
you count the no's to get to a yes. Does that help you?
Yeah, that's useful.
Yeah, that's good. It is the reality of it. Most people say no. You're looking for the yeses.
I mean, in a sense, what my takeaway from this discussion is, be active. Analyze, but get right out there.
Right.
I've heard salespersons say that when someone says no, it's a gift because you don't waste your time on them. You can move on.
Right.
What do
Which
you
is
think?
that.
What do you think of that?
I think if it's genuinely no, sometimes
Yeah.
people say no, and you've just got to work a little harder for them to realize that there is value that you're offering them. But if it's truly no, and there's going to be those times, then that's that third of the pie that so many salespeople, it may be a relationship they start and they feel comfortable, so even though they're being told no, they'll still pursue it because they're in a kind of a comfort zone, but they're just wasting time not only for themselves and their company, but also for the prospect. Because as we said before, you can't be all things. You're not going to be able to help everybody. That's not what sales really is.
But in Linda's situation, she connected with a salesperson that called her, and
Yeah.
she's already happy with someone. That salesperson is now positioned for when her person slips up or goes out of business or whatever.
And that's what I said. He said, I'll send you my contact information. I said, fine, because who knows?
Right.
Because particularly, I'm in manufacturing, you need not only one source, you need backup and backup and backup. So in any service or product, you need to have backups to do your business. And so the people that make those good impressions, you may not get the sale, but you may be the backup person for what they have now doesn't work.
Right.
So building that relationship is,
Yeah, I don't feel like no should, if you're going to accept no, at least make sure they have your information. So,
Right. Because situations
if
change.
your competitor slips up and you're there.
Right. Yeah, I didn't mean just walk away and ignore them, but understand that the sale at that time is not the right fit. But situations change, so yeah, always be ready to check back in with people for when their situation changes. And another part of that is just being consistent in your own mind when you're saying, how do I deal with rejection? It's also about never giving up. And this is from Winston Churchill in the Second World War. Just an incredible guy, never, never, never give up. That was really his mantra. And I'm kind of grateful to him that he didn't give up. And also failure cannot live with persistence. If you are persistent enough and you keep going, if you truly want something enough, you'll find a way to make it happen, and ultimately you will find success. So that's another way to deal with failure. Just understand that you don't want to see failure necessarily as failure in isolation. You almost want to celebrate it and just not be afraid of failure. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, about some celebrities who have failed more than anyone else, but they've also been more successful. And there is no one who's been successful without meeting failure. It's just a part of the formula to get to success. So we're just real quick going to do this thing called a name game, and it's just taking your own name. If you want to just jot that down on the index cards that you have. It's really, there's very few rules to this game. It's just taking your name, and if you have a long name, obviously feel free to abbreviate it. And so I'm Philip, Philip, and it's just with each letter of your name, just think of something associated with selling, something whether it's positive, whether it's an attribute a salesperson should have. It could be a word on its own or part of a sentence. But just form it around your name. And the idea of this is just that in your head, you're always thinking positive words and phrases that you're going out into the field with. The other reason it's around a name is because another important part of the selling process is understanding that somebody's name is incredibly important to them. It's something you should use, and if you're emailing them, make absolutely sure when you send an email, just do a double check that you spelled the name correctly. Because for many people, your name is one of the sweetest sounds that there is, and everybody notices, and everyone I'm sure has experienced this. When your name is spelled even with one letter wrong, you just kind of cringe, and it doesn't make it, doesn't sit that well. So just spend a couple of minutes on that. And there's no rules, which is fantastic.
We have a K though. What's a K?
No, it's mine.
Oh, thank you.
So anyone want to shout out the one they came up with their name, first their name and then what you put around it? Anyone first?
I said, my name's Joe. And I said, just listen, be optimistic, and put the effort in.
Great. Excellent. Who else wants to share theirs?
My name's Russ. I put down, need to be realistic, need to be understanding, need to be sensitive, need to solve their problems.
Fantastic. Excellent. And one more?
Be listening, my name's Linda, listening, be insightful, that's not inciting the riot, the other one. Be nice, be determined to be authentic.
Excellent. And listening, we talk about why listening is so important. The other great thing about it, obviously it's helping them trust you because you're genuinely listening to them. But also in sales, it's about, obviously you're trying to figure out how do I help this person. And the more you're listening, you're actually doing yourself a huge favor because you're figuring out, by asking them questions and listening, you're figuring out the benefits that you have that are going to match their needs. That's really the crux of what selling is all about. And if you're not listening, there's no way you can find that out.
And when I meet somebody, my goal is to find what I have in common with them. What's our commonality? And in sales, that would also work, in addition to what you were just saying.
Right. Which is a great way to start. If you're meeting someone for the first time, is to try and find common ground. But doing it in a genuine way, because that time you look on the wall and you see like a fish or something, you say, where do you catch that fish? If those kind of scripted lines, people can tell when it's not genuine. But if you have a genuine, something in common, that's a great way to start. And often in a presentation, it's best to start with absolutely nothing to do with the business. Just something on human terms to help build rapport and build a human connection that's not related to your actual business in any way. So just real quick, as a team, if we could just the word sales, because that's what we're talking about today, what are a few words that would go around this word? So S.
Smile.
Smile. I've heard when people are actually selling on the phone, some people have recommended they actually have a mirror in front of the phone just to check that you're smiling. Because when you're on the phone, people don't have the visual cues. So all they're doing is hearing your voice, and it's really important that your voice is coming across in a positive way. And the easiest way to do that is by smiling. Either that or they're just very vain and they're just like looking at themselves. I don't know which way.
Ask.
Ask. Fantastic. The L?
Listen.
Listen.
Empathy.
Eye contact.
What's that? Empathy? So you? Empathy.
Solve problems.
Solve problems. They don't have a headache trying to read it.
they spell different in your country?
Yeah, we write different. This is the English font. This is a nice little, talking about listening. This is the very simple thing to always remember.
You're probably really right-handed, though.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm actually not even English, it's just a nice icebreaker when I'm talking to friends.
I saw through that.
Right. Could you tell it's Louisiana, that's what I'm from.
Yeah.
So my writing's bad, my drawing is even worse. This, believe it or not, is a person. So, is that amazing? It's
Does it
beautiful.
have hearing protection on it?
No,
This is for
it's
sale
listening
after.
ears.
So, for any salesperson, it's very key to remember we have one mouth and we have two ears. So we should always be listening twice as much as we're speaking. And if you just follow that golden rule, it really will go a long way. Listening doesn't mean just not talking. That's another mistake a lot of salespeople make. There's a great quote that says, most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to speak. Salespeople by nature love talking. They love hearing their voice. So often what they're doing is they think, okay, I've got to listen. All they're doing is watching the prospect's mouth moving, thinking, when is he going to shut up so I can hear my own glorious voice again? And you're not genuinely listening to what the prospect is saying. So it's always important to remember, listening doesn't mean just not talking. It means actually genuinely listening to what they're saying. And that's going to help you, as we said before, build the trust, but also be able to tailor and customize your presentation around what their needs are. The more they're speaking, the better, because the more you're finding out about what their needs are. And if you don't believe me, there is a guy who is pretty incredible guy, the Dalai Lama, who said, when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know, but when you listen, you may learn something new. So that's something that's definitely worth remembering. So we're going to just take a very short course in human relations. And this chart is really fantastic. Just 6 areas of what you should always be remembering. The 6 most important words, I admit I was wrong. The 5 most important words, you did a great job. The 4 most important, what do you think? The 3 most important, could you please? Thank you are the 2 most. We, and then the least important is I. So as you said earlier, it's absolutely important for you to be able to convey that you have great product knowledge and talk about not only necessarily yourself, but the product. But first, it's more important than anything else to be truly listening and talking about either we or the prospect. And even if you're emailing, I think it's always worth, when you finish an email, take a look at it and just see how many I's there are in it and how many U's. And there should really always be more U's than I's. And often people will be full of I. And that's not a way to engage the person who's listening to the email. The more you can say you, the better. Sometimes it's unavoidable to put some I's in, but there should always be more U's than I's. So I just wanted to put a picture up. This is Alan Schuman, who, my late father, who actually was in sales in England 50 years ago and did sales training up and down the country in England. And the reason I put the slide up is just because his presentation, which we kept, and I was just taking a look at it a few months ago. Obviously, he didn't have the internet, but they were just cards that he would draw out. And the incredible thing is, it was 50 years ago, but the founding principles of what selling is all about, the foundation of selling, doesn't change. It should be adapted, but the principles of it are the same. So these are actually his cards that he used 50 years ago. Having a positive mental attitude, the things we've been talking about, what a salesperson should possess, the words you should be using, these all stay the same. Nothing changes. It's about being positive and about influencing the best ways to influence the prospect. So some of the words that give you a positive mental attitude. Words you should try and take out of your vocabulary. Not just when you're speaking to a prospect, but really just in everyday life, so that you can always be a very positive person. The more you can do that, the easier it'll become. So these are words that you should typically be trying to avoid. Some winning phrases that are always good. They were great 50 years ago, they're great today. To put into your presentations, whether it's emailing on the phone in front of a prospect after you've made a sale. Be talking about your customers, your business, how it can save you time and save you trouble. These are all benefits. Good publicity for you. You can depend on me. Now is the time. I see your point. Dismiss it from your mind. Let's do it today. Just a few ideas. So do any of you have an elevator pitch? So if you're at an event and you meet a potential customer, do you have something that just kind of condenses everything that your business is about in just a few short sentences? Does anyone have that already?
I work on it, I keep changing my mind about it.
You do. Do you have anything that if somebody said to you, hey, what do you do?
Right now, I've lost my confidence on it.
Okay. So how did you start to build it? Was there
Well, I
a
took a business planning course, and that's focus right there. She has practice.
Okay. And was it a few sentences, or how long
I
was
think it was 30 seconds. 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. Okay.
That was her.
Somebody asked Sergey Brin to condense, I think it was Richard Branson said, hey, how do you sum up your business? You should really try and boil it down to that 30 seconds, but then even further, if you can bring it down to just 5 words. And Google is Google. And how on earth do you put that into 5 words? And he said, I help people find things. And it's just so incredibly simple, but it explains what Google is all about. You can talk about it being a search engine, but what does that really mean? But I help people find things. It doesn't get much easier than that. So if you can find a way to boil your entire business down to 5 words, keeps it simple in your mind, and then it's very easy, depending on how much time you have, it makes it easier to relate it to somebody else. And human nature is, after a few minutes, people, they get easily distracted. And on the phone, the first kind of 6 to 8 seconds, once you get through to a potential customer, every word you say is critical. So it's really important to make sure that every word you're using is the most effective it can be. So there is a formula to an elevator pitch, and this would be more like that 30-second pitch. And it really boils down to 3 things. It's what, who, and how. What are you? What are you? Who are you for? And how are you different? You always want to be differentiating yourself from the competition. And there's obviously always going to be competition. So what is it? Who is it for? And how is it different? What I would say, as an example, is obviously what I do is sales training. It's for either people who are relatively new to sales or more experienced salespeople looking to refresh some of the principles they've learned. And how is it different? It's real-world selling tools that you can take out back into the field and be more effective as a salesperson. So that would be how I would describe what I'm selling. So if you wanted to just first on your own, just with this formula on an index card, just put this into your business. Use those same headers for who, the, is, a, that, unlike, or something close to that. And use this formula just to try and construct your own elevator pitch. And then after we've done that, we'll just get into pairs and just kind of read that to each other so that it feels more like a real life situation where somebody says, hey, what do you do? And you could just give them your elevator pitch. So just spend a few minutes on that. So once that's done, if you just wanted to get into pairs or 3, and just to each other, just say, hey, what do you do? And then try and give that elevator pitch. And see how it feels. Sounds good. I want to find out more. Come down and chat Moses. That's right.
For animal lovers who want the best, the Disc3 high quality, cutting edge gear related for New England, unlike nationwide companies. Our product is good.
Excellent. Have you done it? Because it sounds very natural. And the more you say it, the more natural it becomes.
And that's what I'm picking up. A little bit of both. I mean, obviously, the tables,
What's the
I
fifth?
kind of feel a little off,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That might help.
Right. But that's kind of what they should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I always just think it this is the first one.
But it can be tailored, yeah, depending on who you're speaking to, it should be taken over. And the basic formula.
She deals with the same. You're right.
So I just wanted, there is something really important with that elevator pitch. You're always wanting to differentiate yourself from the competition. That's really important. But what's even more important is never to run down the competition. So when you're saying how you're different, don't ever talk about the competition saying they don't know what they're talking about or anything negative, because that never sits well with the prospect that you're talking to. You can certainly say they do a decent job or something, but just say why you're even better, or what makes you different. But it's just very important to remember, that's very golden rule, is never run down.
Plus, you might be working for them.
Hey, Phil,
Yeah.
just one thing that I do is I do some adjunct instruction. One thing, if you're having trouble with this, and even with clients I'll have them, it's always easy to talk about your business in 5 cents. All right? Once you do that, then say, okay, what's important there? I want it 3 cents.
Right.
And then maybe get down to eventually 2 and 1. And then like Phil said, maybe 5 words will come out. But if you're having trouble thinking of the scope, start large.
Yeah, that's good.
Go down.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have really a series, depending on how long you have to chat with someone. If it's literally in an elevator and you have 30 seconds, you can give that full pitch. If you're at a networking event and you know you only have 5 seconds, then you can boil it down, as Charlie says, to 5 words or even less. So it's good to have a variety. So the elevator pitch, the whole goal of it is for someone at the end of it, when you've given it, is to pique their interest. So they say, hey, maybe I don't have time right now, but offer them to give you your card, and then you can find a time to chat in more detail about it. So it's really just that initial piquing of the interest. That's what an elevator pitch is for. And there was one example over here where someone actually said, oh, I want to find out more, which was fantastic. That's the whole goal of it. So an example of where you can